G70, transport rated 5/16. So we recently uploaded a video with some chain tricks showing you my favorite chain, a rigging chain, and tying down my 10,200 pound excavator on my tilt deck. Well, as it turns out, you guys really hammered me in the comments, and mostly you were right. So let me show you some of the things that I've learned from the comments, that I've thought about, that I probably need to correct. In fact, I certainly need to correct. But I'm not going along with every one of your suggestions. There's some of the habits that I've developed that, doggone it, I think I could defend and I'm going to stick with. But in general, hammer me again, because I'm going to do what I think is best now, tying this thing down, and show you some things that I do, corners that I cut, tying down my little Kubota wheel tractor and my dump trailer. So the first thing that you corrected me on, where you were absolutely right, was tie this down with 4 chains, plus the bucket. But at least 4 chains on a 10,000 pound load, and boy, that makes sense. And when I looked at my excavator a little more closely, look at this. That's where they wanted me to tie it down, not the eye that is underneath the machine, which is specifically for towing. Makes sense to me. As soon as I read it in the comments, I knew you were right. When we were hauling our bulldozers, a D4 and a D6, we would tie it down to the track at each corner. Each corner. And then the comment that really convicted me of my sins was, when you tie down with 2 chains and you lose one of them, you got nothing. You tie down with 4 chains, you lose one, you're still held down in 3 spots. So, yeah, thank you for all of that. If you're hauling 10,000 pounds or more, tie it down 4 times. Cross tie if you can, maybe like this. And the D-ring, not the stake pocket. Now there were lots of comments on that that were moderately convincing. Boy, that's going to be awful close. But the one that sold me was that that's a fillet weld, and that is a fillet weld. And these on stake pockets are always run downhill. Now a MIG gun running downhill is not near as strong as a fillet weld, okay? I'm sold. The D-rings are there for a purpose, and they're load rated. Let's see if my binder will fit into this space. Now my chains were too long, but I didn't have to go buy new chains. I just had to go buy 4 new hooks, clevis hooks, where a pin goes through like in a clevis or a shackle. It's just as strong as the 5/16 grade 70 transport rated chain is anywhere else. So I cut it in half. I have 4 10-foot chains. Turns out, with this attachment, 10 foot is still too long, but I can make it work. Now, 2 other things. First, of all the comments about loading and safety and you don't want it to come off the trailer no matter what happens, there was one that was so coherent, talking about the percentage of the tension that's pulling down, he said, is supposed to be 90% download. Well, this is still very flat, but it's a lot closer to 90% than what I had before. I can hear you screaming right now about how dangerous that is. And you're right, that's a mousetrap. I'll demonstrate later just how dangerous that is. And that's the reason I use a Swede and not a pipe for tightening these things up. I'll show you that in a second. I'm going to do that just about as short as I can. Binder. A couple inch short. Do my adjustment down here. Let's see how that one is. Too loose. Just about right. The safety feature here is that won't come off, so it won't slip off in the middle of a hard pull. Let's see if we got too much. That's a lot, but I'm doing it. then tie it down. Oh, this is a lot better than going underneath, boys. Thank you. Too tight. Still pretty tight. Half a link of slack. Pretty good. Ole to the rescue. One more. Pretty tight. Give up half a link. Now you can see that these binders are old school. They're strong. You can pull a car out of a ditch with them. You can do all kinds of things with these, including break your jaw, break your forearm. I'll show you where the real danger is in that, but you're so right about those beautiful little ratchet tighteners. I bought some. I'm going to use one right now to tie this bucket down, which, as you pointed out, is a legal requirement. If you have any sort of an appliance or attachment on your machine, you got to tie down the attachment in addition to the machine. Let me throw one of my rigging chains, one of my brand new ratchet tighteners on here, and you can see that I am not utterly committed to my confirmation bias. When I was 16, I hauled hay for Bob Hall. He traded .30-06 ammunition to me for my labor. He was a World War II vet. He had this Army surplus .30-06 ammo, including armor-piercing rounds. So my dad had a piece of 3/4 inch plate, and I set it up next to the barn, rattled off a few shots, and I heard this funny sound in the leaves in the tree over my head. And it was the jackets off the armor-piercing round peeling off and coming back over my head through the walnut leaves in the front yard. Whoa! So I didn't want to throw this away, so I thought I'm going to put it somewhere where I'm going to have it for a while. That's what it looks like when a .30 caliber round hits and doesn't quite make it through the other side, and the jacket peeled off and comes back. As you could see, I used to be able to shoot. So if you're scared about these old boys breaking your jaw, I learned that in other parts of the country these are called bulldogs, not chain binders. But if you don't want to be wounded by a chain binder, and you've got to buy something new anyway, buy some of these ratchet type tighteners. They're safe, they're positive. For me, they're a little slow. I've used the bigger ones. I own one of the bigger ones, I couldn't find it. But I'm not buying $100 binders to replace, ratcheting binders to replace the ones that I own. Because every time I use one of these, I think of my dad saying, "Now you got to be careful. These things will break your jaw." And that's all he said. So I'll show you exactly how they break your jaw here in a little bit. But in the meantime, I'm going to use my new rigging chain and one of my 4 new ratcheting tighteners to hold down the bucket. The beauty of this is I get a chance to get grease on my brand new chains and binders. I hate grease. So I'm hoping that tying down on this does not put pressure on that hydraulic line. Not worth squishing a hydraulic line to demonstrate a tie-down move, is it? I'm going to drop through, we're going to play by the rules. I'm going to drop the slip hook through the D-ring, and then you guys tell me if this is not right, and I'm sure you will, but I'm not putting the slip hook onto the point of contact. I'm grabbing the far side of the chain, coming up here, getting a hold. Let's see if we can make this thing. The only times I've used these before is when rented equipment is being delivered. Because United Rentals, see now right there, you got to make sure you've got enough slack paid out in the screw before you start, or you waste your time. Tell me again how these are faster, boys. So I guess the rule would be that you would want to have these backed out pretty much all the way before you start your hookup. So the problem is I got to pull twice as far pulling around that pulley connection rather than pulling directly in line. If I had a grab hook on this end, oh, look at that. The bucket is so happy, and so is the enforcement officer that might pull me over. Thanks for the tip, guys. Now I'm going to throw my little Kubota in the dump trailer. So now the mousetrap danger of these things. I mean, it's going to bite you at two moments. Right when you're tightening it down at the last second, and maybe when you're taking it off. But you just got to pay attention, like everything else on the job. The way you're going to get bit is if you're using a pipe to get your leverage. See, watch. How would this feel? Well, that would hurt, right? So when you're tightening it up, if you use a pipe, it can slip off. Let me just make it easy on myself and not make it so graphic. It's another reason not to use a pipe. So if you're using a pipe, you can visualize that if you didn't slip it on there far enough, you're in a hurry, and you're coming into a hard pull, and well, I don't know how to mock it up, but the idea is that these things, once they're on, here, let's try it like this. Stand back, boys. Boom. A pipe is not the same thing as a Swede, because the Swede slips around that ball, that upset end, to where it can't come off. Right? You can lean into it, and it becomes a perfect extension of the handle. And then to take it off, you just do that. I think I mentioned already, I grew up watching my dad use these. Log trucks still have them sometimes. There was a stack of about 24 of these things around here when Dad finally couldn't haul the peeler core anymore. It's integral to my childhood, and is that reason enough to use it? I don't know. But the fact that I own them means to spend $400 to buy 4 ratcheting types to tie it down when I only haul this guy, what, 8 or 10 times a year? Sorry, boys, doesn't add up. Got a Swede, am a Swede, going to use these, but I'm going to use a ratcheting type in other places for other reasons because they are slick. Okay, so as I tie this down, a couple things come to mind. And one of them is that right here is, I think, a pretty good example of a comment that I get about pulling directly into an open hook and trying to pull on the back side of the hook instead of the front side. It's a subtle difference, but I think if you're hooking and pulling directly out of a slip hook, you try to pay attention so when everything comes tight, it's closer to the eye rather than to the tip. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then let me just point out the beauty and utility of a dump trailer. It saves me every day. But at a moment like this, I say, am I sure that I want to continue to haul my garbage to the dump in my dump trailer? Yes. But it always brings the added sort of mental static of wondering, I wonder exactly what it is that I'm kneeling in when I'm tying down a load after I made a load to the dump. I don't know. But, you know, we have a lot of conversations on the channel about, let's see, this going the right way? No. About on-the-job safety. And you know that it's not the first thing I always think about. But doggone it, the most dangerous thing we ever do is drive an automobile. And in much the same way that a 16-year-old boy or a 17-year-old boy behind the wheel of a car, lacking practical experience, is so dangerous. And their insurance premiums are so high until we get to be 25 and our frontal lobe is fully developed. Sometimes, and maybe I'm a case in point, our frontal lobe can be fully developed and we overlook the risk we are taking on behalf of others if we don't tie down a load properly. So let's pay attention to that, should we? That's job safety that everybody should be able to get behind. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work. you.